So to me, it wasn't, I didn't look at any one thing in her life because I think she's so much more than this thing that happened to her. And yes, it can change the course of her life, but it doesn't define her. She defines herself. And that to me is really, really beautiful. She's not a victim and she's not a survivor. That to not be defined by the men in her life, whether it be her father, whether it be this beautiful love that she has, or whether it be this toxic love that she has, she's never defined by the men in her life.
Hi, besties. Blake Lively, I think she has made a deal with the devil because she's going to ride into the sunset on the sworn declaration of a known liar, James Basuka. And her attorney yesterday filed in court a response to James' declaration, which dun, dun, dun. Now we know why he filed the declaration. And amid that declaration that was filed, her letter was being used to paint a narrative that with Wayfair was withholding evidence. But her attempt to manipulate the court in such an egregious and obvious way was not met well by the judge. And we'll get to that at the end of this video. But Judge Lyman issued a ruling that scolded Blake for filing an improper letter. James' filing of a declaration that was in complete opposition to what he has already said so many different times to so many different people, and opposite what he said in a declaration from June, felt really weird for timing, right? And then Blake suddenly pounced on it and used that to get ahead of the judge and say to the judge, listen, this is why I need this evidence. Because I believe Blake knows that she's not entitled to that evidence. And I think she also knows that some of those communications would likely be covered by attorney-client privilege. But James is an unreliable narrator, and she really did make a deal with the devil because he lies all the time, and the judge saw right through her games. So let's talk about James Basuka and this declaration game. I'm going to share with you even more evidence of James and his flip-flopping and how he and Leslie Sloan together smeared Justin Baldoni, and James then ran to Baldoni only when he realized that he might be liable. And then he ran to Lively, obviously, because he became her co-conspirator in this scheme to manipulate the court with a declaration that was false. So let's get into it. This one is going to be juicy. So she has been in this fight with Wayfair that she believes she's entitled to their communications with people after she initiated her lawsuit, because she's proposing that they are running an ongoing smear campaign, which is ludicrous because they have the right to defend themselves, right? And just like she's run to the media to smear Justin, they have a right to respond. So in this case, because so much of her case has fallen apart, now they're going to use James and say that James is proof that they included a text messages that they knew were false and that they willfully included these knowing it was false in order to further perpetuate a smear campaign. And then they filed this lawsuit in bad faith, which again matches their sanctions document. And they're using this as a means to, get evidence that they believe they should have access to in most circumstances would not be available to them. So their argument is that Exhibit A is a text communication dated on December 25th that shows one of the central claims asserted by the Wayfair defendants in this case, that Leslie Sloan told Mr. Basuka that Miss Lively was sexually assaulted by Justin Baldoni, had no reasonable basis in fact. These allegations was the pretense upon which the Wayfair defendants sued Miss Sloan, her company, and Miss Lively. Not really. That statement was not the reason why they sued him. They sued them because of the New York Times. Regardless, Exhibit A presents clear evidence that Brian Friedman and Melissa Nathan understood no later than December 25th that their core factual allegation regarding this defamation claim was baseless. Further, neither Nathan nor any of the defendants or their counsel produced the December 25th, raising the question whether their insistence on maintaining a December 20th cutoff date is motivated by their possession of this and or similar documents. So they're basically using his declaration and the fact that he received these emails and texts on the 25th to state that they're withholding evidence because they're guilty. That's the whole motivation for James filing that declaration. They claim that they knew it was false. Mr. Friedman knew on December 25th, 3 weeks before he filed the original complaint in this action alleging defamation against Sloan, that Miss Sloan did not tell Mr. Bazooka that Miss Lively was sexually assaulted by Mr. Baldoni. That is like literally a tiny paragraph of a greater, longer lawsuit, which was mostly in relation to what she did with going to the New York Times. And Mr. Bazooka's text messages with defendant Nathan and Friedman are exactly the types of communications that Miss Lively sought when she propounded discovery demands, not only upon the defendants, but also Friedman and his firm. So they're claiming that, all this stuff wasn't to harass content creators. It was actually because they wanted these communications. And they're saying that now that we have this proof, Judge, you need to allow us to get evidence after this, the 20th of December. And if you recall, Exhibit A that he sent, it says to Miss Melissa Nathan and Brian Friedman, James and Brian, James, I know that it's the holidays, but would you be able to screenshot those texts you have with dates? Anything you have is helpful. Thank you. Brian, it will be easier to send you the screen recording of our conversation, which I can scroll through slowly in the conversation. And you can see that Leslie bashes Melissa, tries to get me to say that Melissa was planting stories and bad-mouthing Blake, then goes off and calls Stephanie Jones a liar. And never once did she mention anything about sexual harassment. Here is the recording. He's talking about the conversations in August. In August, they were not ever disputing that the comments were made in August. They said that their claim was that Leslie had ramped up after August and now was saying that she was sexually assaulted. Many times she gives us information and then her client gets mad and then she comes back and says she never gave it to us and it's a lie. I had many conversations with her about Blake and never once did she say anything about sexual assault. I had a 3-way call with her and Melissa and she never said anything about it then either. I hope this helps in some way. If nothing else, it shows that she doesn't like Melissa and she tried numerous times to get me to say that Melissa was planting stories or that Melissa was bad-mouthing Blake. After I told her countless times it was not the case, she kept going. In fact, I have a communication with him from him to his internal editors where he tells them that the sexual harassment and assault never came up in his reporting from August. From August. He says, I wasn't even aware of such allegations until they appeared in her civil complaint. They said in their lawsuit that's now dismissed that Leslie had ramped up later and added this to the conversation. Also want to note something here that I thought was suspicious right off the bat is that he claimed his phone was stolen. And so he didn't have access to communications. And so they wouldn't be able to get anything that he had with Leslie Sloan. And then he also sent an email and said that he had deleted communications with Sloan and that he retrieved them. So he admitted to deleting evidence and then retrieving it, although we don't know to what extent. And then he also said that his phone was stolen, so he didn't have access to any of the text messages or communications he had with Sloan. Those were two things I thought were really weird. Like, how do you not have this evidence? So your phone got stolen and you don't have access to any of this information anymore. I don't know. I just thought it was weird. He also admitted that after his phone got stolen, he cleared out his iCloud to protect his identity. So evidence was deleted, period. Indirectly or directly, it doesn't matter. Evidence was deleted. Whether he intended for it to be deleted or not, I have no idea. But it really kind of started to feel like he was misleading people when it came to what he had said. And what was the most obvious to me in his entire MO was that he was trying his hardest, no matter how he could, to deflect and project what he had done, his choice to talk to Melissa Nathan and Brian Friedman and break reporters' privilege and then issue information to them, which was giving Leslie source information to Melissa Nathan, which ethically for the Daily Mail was viewed as a betrayal to them and outside of neutrality and exposing source information. And he didn't want to acknowledge that he had done that. And so he would like justify doing that by saying, well, he knew what had happened, he had the truth, and he wanted to blow the whistle. And to a degree, I understood that. But it also felt very clearly like he was aware of his own involvement in doing it. And Daily Mail's position the entire time was that, listen, you're the one that put yourself in this situation. Had you followed our guidelines and ethically been about what we do here, you wouldn't have disclosed source information to another source, which is Melissa Nathan, and you wouldn't have said in a text message that now Leslie is saying sexual assault, because Daily Mail did not refute that James said it. James came up with this excuse of what it meant after he said it to justify and to get out of any sort of liability that he found himself in. Because Leslie could, if she had wanted to, sued him, right? And that's a big issue, right? And then Leslie was also subpoenaing Daily Mail, and Daily Mail wanted out of that subpoena, and they were mad because the only reason they were in the middle of this is because James, their reporter, put them in that position. Whether you agree or not with them taking information from Sloan and publishing it, and it's not true, is neither here nor there, because it's a rag magazine that posts gossip, and they give both sides the opportunity to tell their side of the story for the most part. But the way that Blake and James are framing it right now is that the reason why James got fired was because Melissa Nathan and Brian Friedman put it in this document, put it in the complaint, exposed his identity, didn't get permission from him, right? And that's the reason why he got fired. And Blake is saying he never meant that. And they knew he never meant that. And they knew he said that he never heard that from Leslie Sloan. Well, James sent me a 7-page letter that was marked confidential that he received from his employer when he was fighting with them about his termination. And they don't agree that he even qualifies for whistleblower status because they say he actively engaged in the discussions about the declaration. He was involved from start to finish in what he wanted to include. He gave his feedback. He shared insight the entire time. But they most specifically refuted his claims that the reason why he was in this mess was because it was Daily Mail's fault, or it was Leslie Sloan's fault, or it was Brian Friedman's fault. They put it squarely on him. And they also acknowledged in this letter that was sent to him and his attorneys that he absolutely poured fuel on the fire and said what he said. I'll just read this to you. Mr. Vazuka's present recitation of the events leading up to his signing the declaration is shockingly dishonest. Mr. Vazuka voluntarily discussed Blake Lively's claims against Mr. Baldoni with his publicist, Miss Melissa Nathan, and Mr. Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, via text, and provided them with screenshots of conversation he had with another source, Leslie Sloan, Miss Lively's publicist. He shared this information in connection with their defense and preparation of a case against Miss Lively and Miss Sloan. And as you know, when Mr. Baldoni filed a complaint against the New York Times in Los Angeles on December 31st, he included screenshots of text messages between Mr. Vazuka and Miss Sloan that were provided by Mr. Vazuka to Miss Nathan and Mr. Friedman. These screenshots showed that Mr. Vazuka had written to Miss Nathan. She, Miss Sloan, said the whole cast hates Justin. This has nothing to do with Blake. And now she's saying that Blake was sexually assaulted. Significantly, by providing his text messages with Miss Sloan to Miss Nathan and Mr. Friedman, Mr. Vazuka improperly involved himself and the Daily Mail in an active litigation. Mr. Vazuka's actions providing text messages from one source, Miss Sloan, to other sources, Miss Nathan and Mr. Friedman, were a clear violation of journalistic norms and ethics. Journalists are supposed to report on a story, not become the story. As a result of Mr. Vazuka's actions, which demonstrated a lack of neutrality, it was decided that the Daily Mail could no longer have Mr. Vazuka's byline on reports on the Lively Baldoni dispute. In addition, the messages that Mr. Bazooka sent to Miss Nathan indicated incorrectly that Miss Sloan had stated that Mr. Baldoni was sexually assaulted Miss Lively. Did you see that? The messages that he sent to Miss Nathan indicated incorrectly. They're not blaming anyone on context here. They're saying Vasuka said it, that Miss Sloan had stated that Mr. Baldoni had sexually assaulted Miss Lively, seemingly fueling the disputes between Miss Lively and Mr. Baldoni even further, and particularly the dispute between Mr. Baldoni and Miss Sloan. He acknowledged his mistake to leadership on January 2nd, and he wrote to the executive editorial staff concerning the inclusion of his text messages in Mr. Baldoni's complaint. He explained that he agreed to provide Mr. Friedman with his communications because he saw no harm in doing this and did not expect these text messages to go beyond Freeman. In the same email, Mr. Bazooka reflected that in hindsight, I should have done nothing. He also added that after the complaint was filed, Miss Nathan told me she had no idea that he was going to include those texts, and she apologized. I don't know if that actually is true or not. He has a history of lying. He provided his manager with a text he sent to Mr. Friedman and Miss Nathan in which he told them, when I was sending you that stuff, I was under the impression that it was just a conversation between us. I was never giving you authorization to use my name and photo with exact text. That is insane. Though the amended complaint filed on January 2nd removed certain texts that were provided, it continued to include, with his name and picture redacted, the text between him and Sloan that he sent to Miss Nathan, commenting that now she's saying that Blake was sexually assaulted. Now, not August, now. They weren't ever disputing that she said it in August. They're saying she didn't say it now. And that's what he told them. Later in January, he became aware that Mr. Baldoni intended to file a defamation lawsuit against Miss Lively and others in federal court in New York, recognizing that he had made a significant and very public mistake with respect to the December 31st complaint that compromised not only his own reporting, but also tarnished the reputation of Daily Mail. He sent an email to Richard Ellis, the U.S. managing editor of Mail Online, on January 15th, in which he said that he made explicitly clear to Mr. Friedman not to include me or the Daily Mail in their countersuit. After the situation that occurred last time, I would assume that this goes without saying. In the email, Mr. Bazooka included a copy of his text message to Mr. Friedman in which Mr. Bazooka had stated, I need to make it clear that I do not want to be involved in this lawsuit in any capacity. Being part of this suit or having any association with it, even if names are removed, will jeopardize my job and career. Please ensure I'm fully excluded, and mention of Daily Mail in connection with myself before filing. In there, he's not telling them he never said it. He's not telling them it was a mistake. He's not telling them he meant to say sexual harassment. He's just saying, if you put this in there, I'm going to lose my job. But it had already been placed in a lawsuit in New York, in California. And so they redacted his name. And they did not specifically name him. They referred to him as an unnamed reporter, despite his representation to Mr. Ellis that neither he nor the Daily Mail were to be included. The complaint, even after it was amended on January 31st, still contained multiple text messages that Mr. Bazooka had improperly shared, including several text exchanges between Mr. Bazooka and Miss Sloan, and the text messages he sent to Miss Nathan commenting that Miss Sloan had stated that Mr. Baldoni sexually assaulted Miss Lively. He claims that the only text that was in the amended complaint was that one text, but that's not true. Many of the texts he shared were included in that complaint. So the problem for James is that he gave Daily Mail so many different stories about those text messages because he told the managing editor of the United States, listen, like, I never gave them the authorization. But then he told his desk, like the desk editor that he works with on the floor, that he might have indirectly assumed. It kind of depends on who he was talking to. He would change his story, but he told one of his editors this: I knew that they were using the information in the messages. I assumed that they were going to use it on background and not include my photo and my name, which is why I had amended to remove my photo and name. But even after it was recommended, I was okay with the text messages with Leslie remaining in there. Not only that Beth told me that this was the lawsuit from Wayfair against Baldoni, and this was not the lawsuit from Wayfair against New York Times Leslie is referring to. She told me that they're going to use this against the Wayfair parties to have their case dismissed. So even in his own sentences, he contradicts himself about did he give permission or did he not? And I shared an email previously where he says, well, I might have indirectly sort of kind of told them that, but because my phone was stolen, I don't have access to those emails. So I don't know if I gave them permission or not. I can't even remember what I told my mom last week. His story changed a lot about that authorization. Daily Mail acknowledges multiple times that he absolutely told Miss Nathan that Miss Sloan told him that Justin Baldoni sexually assaulted Miss Lively. They're not disputing it. And they're saying he told them this. Now he's saying he said it incorrectly. And now he's saying it was inaccurate and out of context. And so it's everyone else's fault. But from their position is he inserted himself into a situation that he shouldn't have inserted himself in because of the Shield law in New York and reporter neutrality and reporter's privilege, because he waived reporter's privilege by sharing that information with them. And he's also placing himself in the middle of a dispute. So listen, whatever his intentions were to send the information, he absolutely said it. And from Daily Mail's position, he said it. And from Daily Mail's position, he was not a whistleblower because they never tried to obstruct justice of him complying with the subpoena. And had he not even talked to Friedman to begin with, and him going there and him volunteering information to them, this never would have become an issue. And they blame him for making the statement incorrectly that Leslie Sloan told him that Baldoni sexually assaulted him, Blake. And as far as why he was fired, they told him in that letter, Mr. Vazuka sending Baldoni's legal team text messages discussing his communications with Leslie Sloan and providing screenshots of those communications, which is an unacceptable thing for a journalist to do. Vazuka caught on video apparently keying an elevator in the Daily Mail's New York office by seemingly scraping his key across an elevator door, which the landlord said caused damage that it made Daily Mail pay for. And then Mr. Vazuka posting Sloan's subpoena on social media with provocative commentary. And Mr. Vazuka told Daily Mail that he regretted the information and he acknowledged the elevator door situation and he acknowledged his poor judgment, and they denied that he has any standing for whistleblower claims. And they went as far as to say this: the press coverage that Mr. Vazuka complains of was plainly a result of his own actions. His sharing of one source's text messages with another source, his voluntarily participating in a litigation he was reporting on, and his use of the phrase sexual assault instead of harassment, and not something the Daily Mail caused or controlled. So from their perspective, the only reason Daily Mail had to get involved was because of his choices and his behavior and him saying, and they're literally acknowledging that he told them, James told them that Sloan told him that Baldoni sexually assaulted Blake. And then after he said it, now he's coming up with a story for why he didn't say that. It's called backtracking. And then he's admitting to deleting evidence and deleting his cloud because he needs to protect his identity and deleting emails with Leslie Sloan. So the truth is, if Blake believes she can stand on this, she's insane. He fired Mark Geragos because Geragos clearly knew that if James admitted that his declaration was false, he would get charged with perjury or could be charged with perjury, and that withdrawing the subpoena and saying that he lied or drawing the affidavit and saying that he lied exposed him to perjury charges, which can carry up to 5 years in prison. And he misled Geragos about his involvement. He misled Geragos about his behavior and his insubordination at the Daily Mail. It got to a point with Geragos that they knew that Vazuka was an unreliable witness and he was lying. And so he was begging Garagos to do anything, and he wouldn't, because he effed himself, because he lied to everyone. He lied to Daily Mail, he lied to Wayfair, he lied to me, he lied to any other content creator that he brought in. And if you spend time reading through his emails, he contradicts himself and he tells different stories to whoever he talks to. So it's hard to know what the truth of the matter actually is. And he changed his story aggressively when he got in trouble with his job. And they told him, listen, you shouldn't have been involved in this. You're working for Daily Mail. This is not your responsibility. Even if you had the proof that you say you have, your job is to report news, not to get involved in the situation. Even if you think you can exonerate someone, your job is to be a reporter, not to be a part of the story. And at the end of the day, he wanted to help Justin, but then he also lied to Justin and he misrepresented what he knew. And he also deleted evidence. He was someone that worked with Leslie for years, had a relationship with her, and was a fan of Blake. And he got involved in the story in August because he wanted to squash any idea that the problem on the set was Blake. He wanted to get to the root problem. He wanted to help Leslie blame the other person. And then when it was exposed via the New York Times, then he says, oh, I needed to reach out to Brian Friedman and defend my reporting and say that Melissa never smeared anyone. And actually, it was Leslie that smeared people, and I helped her. I think his first story that he ever told me was the truth. And that was that they want him out, Leslie does, because they know what that relationship between them was. They know that he put stories out for them that might have been false. And then he changed teams to help Wayfair only after it might have been revealed that he contributed to helping Blake lie. And now he's flipping back to Blake. James was so erratic in the time that I spoke to him. He was very up and down and all over the place. And at one point, he drafted a red-lined declaration where he was going to change his story yet again. And he was going to try to say and lie that he did not author the text message that said that now she's saying Blake was sexually assaulted. He did a red line and he emailed this to me, and it says, I am the Daily Reporter that I did not author the text messages at paragraph 193. That was Friedman's error in the Wayfair party's amended complaint. The text messages on 193 are from a lawsuit against New York Times, not against Sloan. My use of the phrase sexually assaulted was a mistake. I meant, and he said, due to the fact that Friedman erred in paragraph 193, this has no relation to the text with me and Nathan on the same page. I told my former counsel and bosses in emails, texts, regret nothing. Further, this phrase was in reference to the allegations in the complaint that Blake Lively filed the CRD complaint in California. The phrase was not in reference to any conversation I had with Leslie Sloan. Sloan left this out everywhere to conveniently match her narrative and spin this into something it was not. Miss Sloan never told me that Miss Lively was sexually harassed or assaulted by Justin Baldoni. Sloan never did tell me because she was not sexually harassed or assaulted. And info Sloan gave me was very anti-Baldoni, but she never mentioned assault or harassment, which is why I knew Blake was lying when the New York Times article came out. Also, I said that she never said this to me in texts that were removed from the complaint when it was amended. He was going to go do a red line and perjure himself again and say that he didn't author those texts and that somebody else did. That's what we're working with James. So now let's get to the order by the judge, because clearly the judge had an idea of what was going down. The timing was not at all coincidental that he would file a motion and a declaration to clear the record with a date of December 25th, specifically to help Blake get access to more communications after the 25th to prove some sort of smear campaign. And then Blake then referenced that she needed something after December 25th. No coincidence there that they're fighting about communications after December 20th. And the judge realized very quickly that she and James likely were conspiring together. And he wrote, Plaintiff Blake Lively filed a letter with the court on August 21st, ostensibly in support of her motion to compel the Wayfair parties to produce documents post-dating December 20th. Although the court granted the Wayfair parties leave to file a supplemental letter regarding that issue, it did so only because Lively provided certain evidence for the first time in her reply brief. The court did not similarly grant Lively leave to respond to the Wayfair parties' supplemental letter. The Wayfair parties have therefore are relieved of any obligation to respond to arguments made in Lively's letter. He literally just cleaned up the docket himself. Wayfair didn't even have to fight that letter. They didn't even have to ask for it to be struck from the record. He literally just said, you don't have to respond to this because that's nonsense. She doesn't have proof. She doesn't have permission to file that. It's irrelevant. And he clearly saw what she was doing because it was going to open up a whole dialogue that he knew was going to turn into a mess on his docket. And most importantly, he's removing responsibility from Wayfair to respond to bullcrap that Blake is using. She literally just tried to manipulate the court, and the judge said, I don't think so. So that's safe for now, I guess. And Mr. James, in his attempt to rewrite history for the 15th time with help of Lively, fails again. Blake has been very busy trying to manipulate this docket this week. She can't say crap about anyone, but she's going to employ others to do it for her. She's got her minions and her puppets saying things to the judge to disparage. And today the judge stepped in on Wayfair's irrelevant, and he clearly saw what she was doing to do it for her. She's got her minions and her puppets saying things to the judge to disparage. And today the judge stepped in on Wayfair's behalf and said, you don't have to respond to that. It was a very nice way of telling Blake that she was out of order. So what are your thoughts about Blake and James? It seems like them teaming up together in a way is a way for them to cover for each other because both of them, Blake and James, participated in a smear campaign against Baldoni. And James knows it, but Blake denies it. But James is now on her side, trying to protect his liability, and he's going to go down in flames. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. A whole dialogue that he knew was going to turn into a mess on his docket. And most importantly, he's removing responsibility from Wayfair to respond to bullcrap that Blake is using. She literally just tried to manipulate the court, and the judge said, I don't think so. So that's safe for now, I guess. And Mr. James, in his attempt to rewrite history for the 15th time with help of Lively, fails again. Blake has been very busy trying to manipulate this docket this week. She can't say crap about anyone, but she's going to employ others to do it for her. She's got her minions and her puppets saying things to the judge to disparage. And today the judge stepped in on Wayfair's behalf and said, you don't have to respond to that. It was a very nice way of telling Blake that she was out of order. So what are your thoughts about Blake and James? It seems like them teaming up together in a way is a way for them to cover for each other because both of them, Blake and James, participated in a smear campaign against Baldoni. And James knows it, but Blake denies it. But James is now on her side, trying to protect his liability, and he's going to go down in flames. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video.